So the two laws that we're going to talk about are just cosine and sine law. And what we're going to try to do, Nathan, is we're just going to talk about when is appropriate to use them. So these laws can help you find the sides and angles of any triangle. But one of the ways to get used to using them, because there's quite a few variables, if you notice you have like an uppercase A, a lowercase a, uppercase B, lowercase, uppercase C, lowercase c, right? And that actually is in both of the laws, both cosine and sine law. So you're looking at 6 different variables. And technically, they will help us find 6 different things on a triangle. We'll call this angle A, and it's common to represent angles in triangles with uppercase letters. So we've called it A, B, and C. And the one thing we just got to get used to when we're creating the triangles so that these laws work is that we need the opposite side to have the same letter, but we usually represent side lengths as lowercase letters. So this would be opposite side A, this is opposite side B, and this is opposite side C. So essentially what we're doing is we're trying to find specific situations of when to use one law or the other. Okay, and we'll kind of scroll down. We'll talk about these two and how they kind of help. You'll notice this one here actually has 2 equivalency signs. And what it's saying is this ratio or this fraction is equal to this fraction, or it's equal to this fraction. It doesn't matter. So you can kind of pair up A and B, or you can pair up B and C. Oops, jump back. You can pair up B and C, or you can pair up A and C when setting up your ratios there. There we go. Cosine law, there's actually like a ton of different versions of it. But what we're going to get used to is naming triangles or setting them up in a way that we only have to memorize one of the formulas. Otherwise, it becomes a little bit tedious to memorize all the other portions of it. In order to use the sine law, you just have to have one of the set ratios and then one piece of information. So you need essentially 3 pieces of information. Just like with cosine law, you need 3 pieces of information about a triangle. So I'm just going to do a rough sketch. We're not going to use any numbers. We're actually just going to focus on what pieces of information we have, whether they're angles or sides, and then which law to use. So we're just going to go through the process of choosing them to start. Okay, we'll do the same thing. We'll still name these A, B, and C, but in this case, I'm just going to draw. I have angle A, side A, and angle C. So the very first thing I need to do is I actually have to make a decision. So let's say I have this piece of information, this piece of information, and this piece of information. I have to decide, is this where I would use cosine law, or is this where I would use sine law to solve this? If you take a look at them, barring the extra equal sign here where we actually just drop off one of the pieces, this sine law tends to be one of the easier ones to work with. And one of the ways to tell is if you have an opposite angle and side together, if you have that ratio, so just like we have here, we have the angle A and the side A. If you have those, then you're usually okay to use sine law. So we can actually go and try to set it up. I'm going to write in sine A, because A is a piece that we have. And that's usually above side A, so we put in lowercase a. I'm going to write sine question mark and question mark just to represent that we don't know what they are. We're going to say we haven't used letters to represent that. And then we have sine C we have, but lowercase c we don't have. So if we quickly take a look at this, and you'll get into the habit, you won't have to draw out all 3 pieces of this. But the middle ratio, we don't have any of the information, so we're just not going to use any of it. We're going to set it up so that we can set up sine A over A is equal to sine C over, and then we'll call this x, okay? And all that is that's the side x. That allows us to find this value here. But the key part of this is we know we can use sine law whenever we have an opposite angle and an opposite side. That's kind of the key piece that we're trying to figure out here. You can then rearrange this equation a little bit abstract because we don't have any numbers at the moment, but essentially you could end up in a scenario where you have x is equal to, let's get an eraser. Let's try and make this simple. A times sine C over sine A. Okay, and then technically you can use a calculator just to calculate this piece and you have whatever x is. The one piece I didn't talk about actually, and I really should, is sine and cos, which I've drawn in the two equations, these are actually equations themselves. You can go and look them up, but they're relatively long and there's quite a bit of putting values into them. We use calculators to calculate them unless we're using really specific types of triangles where we memorize ratios. Otherwise, we're using calculators to piece these together. Let's jump down to another scenario. So we have another triangle here. And in this triangle, we have angle B. Oops. We have angle B, we have side A, and we have side B, okay? So regardless for what they ask us to solve, you'll notice in the first one, I didn't say solve for a specific side. I'm just ending up with what we have, and then we're gonna choose what we can use because we're getting the bare minimum of information. If we only have actually two pieces of information about a triangle, unless it's hidden somewhere that it's an isosceles or an equilateral triangle, or there's a right angle or something, you actually don't have enough information. You need to have at least 3 pieces of information about that triangle. In this scenario here, we have angle B. That's not side B. This was actually side C. Side C as a piece of information and side A as a piece of information. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to try sine law really quickly. Okay, sine law. And we're going to see if we can set up a whole ratio. So we have sine, the angle is unknown, so I'm going to put a question mark, but we have side A. The angle of B is known, but we don't know side B. And the angle of C is unknown, but we do have sine C. Quickly, if we take a look at this, we do not have a single complete ratio. And because we don't have a complete ratio, we can't use sine law here. We have to have one set of ratio, which kind of defaults us to our other option here. The other option is our cosine law. Now, I've told you just to memorize, when we go through the process, a very specific version of it, which requires us actually to rename everything in the triangle, okay? What this is you're either solving for, this represents the side or the angle. So you're either solving for a side or an angle in these scenarios, but in our specific case, we have this information. We can actually only solve for whatever this side is. We're gonna call this X. This is all we can solve for at the moment, is this opposite side, okay? Notice I don't have a letter X in here, and my A's and B's are kind of mixed up. In order to use this very specific version of the law, we're going to rename this triangle specifically. So we already had a B, an A, and a C. What we're going to do is we're just going to set any of our unknowns to either be angle C or side C, and that allows us to use this specific version. Eventually you'll get good enough where this probably doesn't matter, but at the beginning it's a bit of a pain to memorize so many different versions of an equation. So I'm just going to quickly redraw it in yellow here, and I'm going to rename stuff. Since we're looking for this side, this was our X, I'm actually going to rename that our side C, which then means this becomes angle C. And as long as we have the C's correct, the rest of the stuff kind of falls into place. We don't actually, it doesn't make a big difference what we call A and B. So from here, I can continue to call this angle A and side A, and angle B and side C. But just remember, I actually don't have this piece of information, and I don't have this piece of information. Okay, this was a B. So now that we have that, C is what we're going to be solving for. That's this portion of the equation. So we'll put that in green, or blue, I guess. Now let's put it in green so it's a little easier. C squared, so the green is what we're looking for, is equal to, we have side A, we have side B, this is side A and B again, and cos C, yeah, we have the angle of whatever C is. So we have now been able to set up cosine law properly. And this is just really just working through the algebra. We work through the algebra to solve this piece. And then if we need any more information, well, at that point, we'll have an entire ratio, and we can start using sine law. We can bowl through everything. So once you have 3 pieces of information about a triangle, you can use sine and cosine law to find everything else that is actually a piece of that triangle.